Hello, everyone. It's Lisa Norell, and welcome to the Mindful Marketer live stream on Friday, February 19th, 2021. I'm here today with my producer, Stefan Kaplan, and we're going to be spending the next half hour with you talking about something that is quite timely as we enter the third month of the calendar year, still living in COVID era. So first, let me tell you that I'm really glad you're here today. And we normally have people joining us from all around the world. So this is probably our 28th session now. So we love doing these the first 3 Fridays of every month on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook Live. The 3 essentials for post-COVID planning success. Now, why did I pick this topic? Well, it's because COVID has introduced a whole new set of rules that we didn't anticipate. And I want to be sure that you're ready to have a great year, because many of the clients in our communities are having a great year. They had a great year in 2020, and they followed some of these rules and guidelines. So I want to make sure that you benefit from the lessons learned and the models and strategies that I use with my best clients. So first, I want to have you follow me back to a time I was consulting to a $400 million B2B software company. And we were invited to attend their strategy sessions in Toronto, Canada. So there we were in a room with 28 of their top leaders from all over the world. They competed with some very big organizations, including SAP and IBM. And I was excited because the CEO was there, and he got up in front of the group and he said, well, before we break out into smaller groups today, I want you to know I have a PowerPoint presentation, and we are now at the point where I want to show you our 36 priorities. Yes, I said 36 priorities, at which point I scanned the room and people's jaws pretty much dropped. You know, the color left their face. How anyone, by the way, this CEO was trained and groomed at McKinsey, how anyone could present 36 priorities and expect these hardworking leaders to remember more than 3 was pretty shocking to me. That was a time when I realized simplicity and clarity were in short supply. So I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want COVID to tempt you to pile more crap into your strategic plan. And crap is a technical term. You can tell I get passionate about this because this is not the time to pile more crap onto your plate, or to expect your marketing leaders to do 10 times the work with 1/10 of the staff. So my goal today is to pass along some of the strategies and tips that I've seen working so well. So let's again welcome people here today, and we'd love to have you tell us where you're from. And remember, I'll just be checking here to see what questions you have. Hello, Tamika from Maryland. It's good to see you. And absolutely, I am, you can't make this up. I am not joking when I tell you that this person with an MBA from Harvard and classic training at McKinsey had 36 priorities. Whew. Well, anyway, that story may feel frigid, but the temperatures here in Virginia have also been pretty frigid. Stefan, I know you've had some cold temperatures up there in New Jersey as well. And we've had ice storms, power outages. Sadly, we've seen ice storms and power outages and food shortages in Texas. So I want to also send out my good thoughts to all of you who are in Texas and experiencing such terrible conditions right now. But this shows us, it's an illustration that sometimes the best laid plans can fail. And, you have to just take a look at some of the teams who were expected to oversee the power grid in Texas. And they missed out on anticipating that, they would have such frozen temperatures and that pipes would freeze and that the handoff between the fossil fuel plants and the renewable energy plants was not so well coordinated. So again, I'm being a bit of a contrarian here because we are in a time of history where the unexpected is happening all around us. COVID was bad enough, but we've seen political uprising. We've seen changes in temperature, not global warming, but global weirding, as some experts are now saying. So we have to have plans that adapt and change with whatever is thrown our way. Yes, only 40, speaking of things coming our way, 41 inches over 3 weeks in New Jersey. That is one heck of a lot of snow. So planning is more important than ever, but a new way of thinking about planning is needed more than ever. And that's what I want to share with you today. I've been talking, every week I speak with dozens of CMOs and CEOs, either through my LinkedIn following, my live streams, my newsletters. We typically interact with or reach out to anywhere from 12 to 14,000 leaders a week. So I get some really interesting questions and concerns about how do you remain a strategic thinker, a strategic planner when things are moving at, for lack of a better term, warp speed. So what I want to talk to you about are some things that are changing, some dynamics you need to look out for, and then how do you adapt your current plans to those changes? So let me share with you a few things that I believe why traditional planning is not necessarily working as it should. So again, I'm going to go kind of quickly here, and you'll be able to get the transcript and the replay on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Number one, why is traditional strategic planning failing right now? The first one is that the pace of change is faster than ever. Most of you know that. Speed is rewarded. An example, look at how many companies are taking SPACs, the special purpose offerings, as a vehicle for funding in lieu of traditional IPOs, in lieu of the traditional financial markets. SPACs are cheaper and faster. Look at the average attention span. If any of you out there have websites, the attention span right now has really dropped precipitously. So it's clear to me that we have a lot less time now to get the attention of our intended audience. The other area to look at is the rise of chatbots. And the rise of chatbots, I believe, isn't just about reducing the cost of customer support for your given products and services. I believe that chatbots are really helpful because, as Microsoft discovered a few years back, their support costs were very excessive. But what they did when they started to dig under the covers is they found that there were 100 commonly asked questions about their software. And they were really smart about it. They said, well, with that being the case, we are going to create a library of the top 100 questions, and then they called them papers. We will deliver papers back to our customers on how they can address those support problems. So they were able to dramatically reduce the number of, shall we say, redundant or monotonous questions that they were constantly getting. Oh, hey, Bill, good to see you here from Portland, Oregon. I hope you didn't get 41 inches of snow last week. So that the rise of chatbots again is not. It's about this lack of patience that our customers have at waiting for a callback, waiting for us to get their letter. We're not really going to do that anymore. We expect instant responses. Number 2, let's take a step back and look at trust. This is a big topic. We could spend multiple live streams talking about trust. But trust and how we feel towards our institutions is quite radically different now than it was pre-COVID. In some economies, namely the top 4 economies, 4 major economies, South Korea, the United Kingdom, China, Mexico, and Canada, actually 5 major economies, between May of 2020 and January of 2021, there was somewhere between a 13 to 17 point decline in trust in government. So this is in terms of institutions here, we're talking for a moment just about government trust. So this is very interesting data, and this comes directly out of the Edelman Trust Barometer, which I love reading every year. So if you get on Google and you search for Edelman Trust Barometer 2021, you can read more about what they discovered. So as we've seen the shift away from trust in government, what we're seeing is that the trust in NGOs and media and government are just lower than they were in previous years. And it's even worse if the Edelman Trust Barometer really brings this to light. The trust among Trump voters, which may represent, tens of millions of Americans here in the United States, has dropped 13 points. So again, these numbers are pretty jarring when you think about it in terms of, this lack of trust. Now, here's the good news. Because the trust, if you want to call this good news, this is a moment in history when people are turning to corporations and saying, we need you to step up and talk about some of the social struggles. We need you to step up and help us understand how to embrace diversity and inclusion. We need you to step up and figure out how to make pay more equitable. We need you to step up and teach us what it means to run a values-driven organization. And we need you to step up and teach us how to be better servants of our stakeholders and our customers. So it's a ripe moment in history for us in the business world to take on a bigger game in our organizations. Yes. So I agree, Steph. It is a great resource, and I appreciate that Edelman continues to bring us that value. So again, this is your time. So if you're hanging back and you're waiting for a government edict or a policy or a new law, chances are you might be waiting a long time. So these are moments where we can seize opportunity, and many of my clients looked at the pandemic as that time. The other thing that is really driving our plans to be reevaluated or to be more dynamic is what people call the raging infodemic. There's also been, based on the Edelman Trust Barometer, a 5 to 7% drop in trust in various forms of media. Those forms of media include search engines, traditional media outlets, own media, social media, and that drop happened between 2020 and 2021. So it's been, a rapid decline. I also think this is why you're seeing organizations like News Corporation forging, 8-figure deals with Google in order to provide good, vetted, journalistic quality content to Google, the search engine, because there's been so much tension and trouble between the search engine organizations, the advertising organizations like Facebook, like Google, and traditional news outlets. I think this is great too. We have Andy from New Jersey with us, and he has a great comment here about, yes, it needs to feel authentic to the brand, and that is so key. It is so key. So I'd love to hear more from you about that, Andy, because I know Andy from New Jersey, and Andy, you've worked in the world of media and over the years, and I know you well enough to know you're also brilliant in the world of digital marketing, and you are one of the pioneers in that area. So the raging infodemic, this is, how do you deal with that and restore trust when so many of these forces are at battle with each other? Yes. Hi, Andy. And so those are some of the dynamics. The other two that I want to mention to you is that CEOs in general are expected to do more. They're just the volume of workload on CEOs and hence CMOs, stewards of the brand, stewards of demand gen, is increasing. So in the Edelman Trust Barometer, it shows that 68% believes, as I mentioned earlier, that the CEOs need to step in because there are several societal problems that government just isn't fixing for us. It's waiting for that boat to come in. It could be a very long wait. The other dynamic to be aware of is that there's such great unpredictability about the return to work policies. So how much real estate do we need? How do we equip our teams to have functioning offices? How do we deal with people who have children or elderly parents at home and can't really operate effectively from home 5 days a week? I mean, the dynamics and the questions that swirl around this are never ending. And so that is a very important thing to keep your eye on as you're building your plans for the next 10 to 12 months. And these are questions that you need to ask because we don't know when to expect people to start traveling again, to going to conferences, and when they can actually go visit customers safely again. And the other, again, this whole trust issue is so important because even with COVID vaccinations being deployed at a faster pace, we can't manage people's emotional reactions and their own self-trust in going out in the world, in coming to the office. So we have two of these parallel dynamics that we have to constantly manage and monitor, and slowly and carefully persuade people that at some point it is going to be safe to create a new reality. Now, by the way, I don't believe we're going back to normal. So one of the things you'll notice on the live streams is I never talk about going back to normal. This was not just a little blip on the radar. I mean, this pandemic and all the social unrest has called us to invent a new identity for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our businesses, and for the world around us. So those are some of the dynamics. I've mentioned 5. And I also want you to know that I have an entire page, a full list of other planning resources. And Steph will be sure to put those up here on the screen. But we have a whole page of 6 or 7 toolkits, questionnaires, and videos on my website, which you can download. You just go to that site and you'll be able to get all of those resources for free. The other item that you can do, by the way, because I know I'm moving very quickly, is one of my books is Energize Growth Now, and this contains a lot of questions, templates, and toolkits to help you think dynamically about your planning. Yes, Tamika, oh my goodness, you said it well. We are in a whole new world. We are in a whole new world, and I'm very excited about it on most days. On the days I'm worried or I stay up too late working, I'm too tired to be excited. But most of the time, I do practice a lot of optimism because I just see so many growth opportunities around us. So let's talk for a minute about what I mean by dynamic planning, because practicing dynamic planning is a way, it's a new twist, it's a new perspective on how you treat your strategic planning and your growth planning going forward. And some of these things are what my best clients are doing. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about them. So I am a big fan of simplicity. So you'll notice I don't have a lot of charts. I don't have 97 books behind me. I'm not going to show you a bunch of fancy videos because I believe the power of strategic clarity is in the questions that you ask. So the first question I want you to ask as you look at whatever strategic plan you may have created for the coming year or even 3 years out, the first question I want you to consider is to ask, how do we create a strategy and a business model that are sustainable? How do we create a strategy and a business model that are sustainable? So that's the first question that we want to see. Now, what we want to ask, what I'm seeing in the world of marketing and strategy right now is that there is more and more of a confluence between vice presidents of product marketing with head of growth, with chief marketing officer, and even in some cases, the chief revenue officer. So the lines are more blurred than ever. And I'm seeing that happen in our private CMO communities, our peer groups. I'm seeing it also when I hear from recruiters. So this is really a great time if you are in marketing to step forward and volunteer and offer to help. When you're involved, when your company has opportunities for you to sit in and be part of any task forces or special programs where you can review and improve all of the customer touch points and interactions that exist. Marketing can make a huge difference in that process, and it gives you a more holistic sense of how people buy. It also teaches you something we covered last week when Martin Lindstrom was my guest, which is it allows us to practice empathy, to really understand what is it our customers are going through and how do we have to adapt our strategic plans or our product strategies accordingly. The second question we need to ask is, how can we differentiate? So the first question was around sustainability. Do we have the systems, the processes, and the alignment to be a sustainable organization? Now the question is, how do we differentiate? Now, there are many different ways that you can differentiate. Many of us think that we have to differentiate if we're selling a product through our product. But there are really 3 dimensions or lenses you can look through in order to determine, are we truly separate, differentiated from our competition? And remember, your competition can also be do nothing or not invented here. NIH doesn't stand for National Institutes of Health. It stands for not invented here. So since many of you watching and have been watching my live streams since last March, most of you work in B2B organizations. I can promise you that not invented here and doing nothing are often much more palpable competitors than your nearest competitor. So we're going to be just one thing I want to say is that the concept of having a differentiation around your product is certainly a place to look. You also might be able to differentiate yourself around your services. Maybe you have one of the best customer onboarding systems available. An example, look at Salesforce. I mean, I know I've used their examples many times because they excel in this area. Salesforce really knows how to create an onboarding program to help their customers become productive with their solutions very quickly. It is no wonder that their Trailblazer program, which is their user community, is now over 1.5 million users. And people stick with Salesforce. You know, the cost of change is way too painful. I very seldom hear any of my marketing clients or sales clients say to me, oh yes, we're ripping out Salesforce and installing HubSpot. It just doesn't happen. So that's a place to look. So not just your products and not just your services, but also your relationships. So you might really not be very different from your competitors in terms of your products or services. But if you've got some really great strategic relationships, either on Capitol Hill or some really strategic relationships with economic buyers, where you become kind of the cool kid in your category, word gets out. If you know how to leverage those relationships in a meaningful and high integrity way, referrals can be a beautiful thing. So I want to mention that. I know that many of our clients who are watching don't leverage that as a differentiator as much as they could. And it can be just so powerful. I once was the global account leader for a software company, and our second biggest client was the one for which I was responsible. And that little account was up in Redmond, Washington, known as Microsoft. And that account was very small when we started. We had no plan. And under my leadership and a team located in Europe, we were able to create a growth plan for that account. And within 18 months, just by following the plan and leveraging really good relationships within Microsoft, we grew that account from a $2 million account to an $11 million account. We didn't have any bleeding edge technology, and we didn't have a customer service or customer onboarding program. But boy, we knew which executives could benefit the most from our value. And we deepened those relationships within that period of time. So those are some thoughts for you. How can we differentiate based on products, services, or relationships so that we move away from being viewed as a commodity? And again, that concept of differentiation is also temporal. So what might be working for you pre-COVID may no longer be working for you during COVID. So we must be really vigilant about asking that question. How can we differentiate? Question 3. What do we need to do now to remain relevant in 12 to 18 months? So here are some things to really dive into. And these are really great questions to keep in your back pocket when you're in planning meetings or you're talking to your product managers or even your CEO. Do we know who our future customer is? Or are we just kind of milking an existing install base, hoping that we can upsell? Because future customer is where the gold is. So really great clients, really forward-thinking clients I've worked with know how to invest their resources to keep the trains running, so to speak, with their existing clients, but they reserve innovation funding and resources to go do some small experiments, to go find what new products or services might we offer, or existing products and services do we have to go pursue with new audiences. And I really, I look at News Corporation as a good example, right? Because here they are chugging along, building their digital platforms like the Wall Street Journal and others. And they realize, the digital train has left the station. If we want to add some rocket fuel to it, we need to forge alliances, paid alliances with organizations like Google. So this was meant to be, and it was a great idea to help them, again, remain relevant. So do we know who our future customer is? Are we committed to investing in onboarding of customers, branded customer communities, or some people call those customer success forums or divisions in our organizations? Remember what I told you about 3-second attention spans of our customers? Well, that's not going to improve anytime soon. So just because you sold something to them, don't assume that they actually plan on using it or embracing it and adopting it into their organizations. They need your help. They need your coaching. And that can become a differentiator and a point of relevance. So give that some thought. And one other question to consider asking: how is technology playing a role in that equation? So think of it as, how can technology rapidly accelerate the time we can deliver value? Whether it's chatbots or some automated emails or webinars to help people learn how to use your services or your products, or introductions to existing customers for coaching and mentoring. Just think of all the possibilities, because if you don't do that, you're competitively vulnerable. And I have worked for software companies, and one of the software companies I worked for, there was somewhere between a 60% and 80% non-deployment percentage. So the salespeople were quite good at closing the business, but then to teach people how to deploy a CRM system was where the hard rock mining started. And we never had a customer success group. It was more of a contingent reaction versus a preventive action. So that's one other thing I'll mention is, I'm giving you these questions because I believe in preventive versus contingent actions. You want to have the preventive organizational groups in place, such as customer success, such as implementation teams, so that you're not dealing with an unhappy customer 3 months later who says, I bought this stuff, I don't know how to use it. Where do I go on your website? Oh no, it's a chatbot. Those then trigger much more expensive reactions and resolutions. So think about those. Now, I'm going to give you a few of my favorite stories as well about companies that really understand the triad that I've described to you. They understand the dynamic planning concept. They understand what it means to create a sustainable company. They know how to differentiate, and they know how to be relevant, sustainable, differentiated, and relevant. One of my favorites is Airbnb. Now, Airbnb gets an A+ for being relevant. And I also give them an A+ because they are differentiated. The Wall Street Journal recently published a chart that showed that their current valuation post IPO is much higher than the combined valuations of some of the largest hotel properties, Choice Hotels, Marriott, Starwood, etc. And, it's a fascinating study on how to be nimble in business. But early on in COVID, if you watch what they did, is they had a marketing strategy pre-COVID, which was, wherever you're flying, find a beautiful Airbnb home or lodging. But when COVID hit, they pivoted very quickly and they said, people are not flying. It's not safe to fly, but it is safe to get in your car and drive to a wilderness area or a place with lots of open space and stay in a home that has been sanitized, only with people within your safe zone. And they were very successful, and their financials demonstrated that they were able to maintain optimism and hope from their audiences. The other is, look at when it comes to relevance and it comes to differentiation, look at any companies that are building strong recurring revenue models. So you already know about Netflix, which is a classic example, but Apple is recasting itself now. And I learned this from listening to many of Professor Scott Galloway's podcasts. He's an NYU Stern School of Business professor, has sat on the board of directors for the New York Times, and has quite a bit of marketing gravitas. What he has been watching and tracking is that the recurring revenue model at Apple used to be in the single digits, and now it's over 20%. So they're creating a sustainability platform for Apple for many, many years to come. Just for numbers, Netflix, Microsoft, and Apple are now valued at 9 times revenue. Now, the companies that have not looked at recurring revenue seriously, like AT&T, is trading at 2 times revenue. So you can see that the market rewards recurring revenue models, and it's something for you to consider if your business is being designed to be a sustainable business versus, a lifestyle business or a mom and pop business. The other company I want to mention before we wrap up is Park Mobile. Park Mobile is a mobile app company based in Atlanta, Georgia, been voted one of the best places to work, been voted by the various technology associations as one of the most innovative app companies. And they have continuously become more and more relevant because many people have stopped driving to cities to go to work, so they haven't needed the mobile app. So Park Mobile saw that last spring after we all got over the initial pain of COVID, where people didn't go anywhere. And they noticed people were going to summer locations, to the beach. So they took a lot of their marketing energy and they started to forge alliances with municipalities around beach towns in Maryland, Maryland, New Jersey, and Delaware. And they saw that, by teaming up with those municipalities, they were able to create paid parking revenue for them as well as for the municipalities, and seized opportunities elsewhere. And it's for that reason I think you should watch Park Mobile, just because they move so quickly, they practice dynamic planning, and I'm sure they have modified their strategic plan for the company many times since COVID started. So I hope you get some inspiration from Airbnb, Netflix, Apple, and a smaller company such as Park Mobile, because examples of dynamic planning are everywhere around us if you take the time to learn from them. So those are my thoughts today. I never really understand how time can fly so quickly, but it does. So if you're wondering, okay, how do I do this in my company? Again, download my free resources, get a copy of my book, Energize Growth Now. Drop me a note if you have a question, and I will be happy to answer them for you or send you some potential suggestions. I'm also reachable at lisa@lisanorell.com, and happy to be of service to you in these crazy COVID times. So with that, I want to tell you we have another session coming up. I'm glad you were here today. March 5th is our next Mindful Marketer live stream. And as you'll see here, we have a great guest coming to join me. Her name is Monique Elliott. That's March 5th here on the one and only Mindful Marketer live stream. And Monique is the CMO of Schneider Electric. She has a lot of experience working at organizations such as GE, ABB, and other large industrial automation organizations and manufacturers. And we're going to talk about what does it mean when you're not number one in your market? How, if you're challenging the main competitor, the big kahuna in your field, what are some strategies that you can do when you're number 2, number 3, or number 4 in your field? It's going to be a great discussion. So with that, again, thanks all of you for joining us. And until I see you March 5th, stay mindful, stay healthy, and watch out for those slush puddles. Bye, everybody.